Hey everybody, welcome to Anime Slushy. I'm Feen.
And I'm Cube.
And I'm here to tell you why I think you should watch or read the Lord El-Melloi case files, which is a spin-off of the Fate franchise.
Hell yes. I want to know about it, but also I never watch or read anything anymore, so you gotta tell me about it.
That's not true. You've watched so much new stuff recently.
That's true, but I only watch horrible things. And this sounds good, so I can't possibly watch it.
All right, so yeah, this is a chunk of the Fate franchise, which I've wanted to like talk about Fate for a long time, because I've slowly gotten into Fate over the last few years. Now, I think the first thing I want to acknowledge when it comes to Fate is that, like, if you've ever seen any other YouTubers or anyone else talk about Fate or try to describe it, Fate is often made fun of for being very complicated and hard to get into. I understand why that happens because, like, if we're honest, Fate is complex.
Fuck yeah, it is.
There's a lot going on, but that's kind of one of its strengths. Like, if you like a story that has just a ton of ideas roaring around and lots of, cool moving pieces, Fate's for you. It's a great franchise if you like that sort of stuff. But I do think there is an issue with getting into it. Like, what is the starting point? What's the starting point you recommend for Fate? Because, like, the correct starting point is the original VNs that were published back in the 2000s. But if you're not a native Japanese speaker, that's a very hard starting point. Like, for one, a VN is already like a fairly niche way of presenting a story. Also, the VNs for Fate, the three original roots, have never been published in English. So if you want to play them as an English speaker, you have to pirate them, patch them, and then, like, have a machine that can run them. And that's all kind of tricky. Like, it's a lot to ask of people.
But Phoenix, we've come so far. I remember back in the day, before visual novels were more of like a thing that people were aware of in English, Fate was this thing that people would bring up as like, that's the holy grail of visual novels. Everyone loves it, but it's too long. No one will ever translate the whole thing. It can't be done. It's impossible. But now it's done and you can actually read it, and you kids don't know what you have.
Yeah. Like, even though it's easier now, it's still hard. Like, it's a bit of an ask, really.
Yeah.
So it's kind of incredible in that respect that Fate, and also a testament to how big it is, that Fate has actually got a following in the Western world, despite the fact that the actual starting point has never been translated or sold here.
Well, the original cartoon was pretty popular, the adaptation, which of course everyone considers really bad now, but, it gave people a baseline familiarity with the characters in the franchise.
Yeah. It's funny, though, because if you talk to Fate fans, they'll tell you not to watch those.
Yeah, don't. I mean, I watched it, and I liked it, and it made me like Saber, and then I read the visual novel, and she's my wife, but don't watch it. Yeah.
Like the Dean one in particular, it's badly animated, it's not a very good adaptation. But the trouble is, if you don't have, because that's a bad starting point in terms of just it kind of sucks, like, the better anime is the second route, the Unlimited Blade Works, which really requires you to know the first route pretty well. And what every other Fate franchise kind of assumes a base level knowledge of the world that would have come from the visual novels. So, like, me personally, for example, I got into Fate through Fate Go. And I just spent the first year and a half of playing that game just not really understanding what was going on most of the time. Like, every time there's something really confused me, I just had to go to, like, the gacha chat in the SD Discord and ask people, so what are they talking about? And everyone would just laugh at me and go, Fate. But, like,
here's a really badly written wiki article.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The fucking wiki sucks.
Yeah. Goddamn. But so this is especially good because it's specifically a spin-off of a spin-off of the original story.
Yeah. So this is the thing, though. Like I said, one of the appeals of Fate is that it has really deep lore, and it has a lot going on in terms of ideas and different sort of systems and stuff. So when you've got a franchise with really deep lore, what I really enjoy is when you break off a chunk of that lore and play with it. Lord El-Melloi case files in particular focuses on the world of mages within Fate. So going back to the original VNs for a minute, the basic idea of those original stories is it's all based around a thing called the Holy Grail War, in which mages, who are a thing that exists, in hiding in the real world, they summon the spirits of heroes from the past, and they all fight each other for this thing called the Holy Grail, which is like this container of magic that will let you make some sort of insane wish. Within the VNs, there's a lot established about the world of mages. Like, for one, all mages are assholes. And 2, what all mages are trying to do is get to this thing called the root, which is this thing in the earth that is the source of all magic.
I mean, except for the ones who have abandoned the root. I mean, not all of them. I mean, ideally, you're supposed to be looking for the root, but some anti-intellectual mages are not looking for the root.
Well, this is what I was about to say. Case Files focuses on the world of mages, and it also does the thing that all the best Fate stuff does. It takes it establishes all these rules as read, and then breaks all of them. Because even the original visual novels do that. They establish all these rules about how the Holy Grail works, and then nothing in that Holy Grail works by the rules of what's supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the fun of it.
If fate ever tells you how something's supposed to work, you can be rest assured that's not what's going to happen.
So, the pitch of Case Files, what if you had murder mysteries with mages?
Hell yeah.
Which is, on its own, is a fucking great pitch. It's focused on a guy called Waver Velvet, or also known as Lord El-Melloi II.
Also known as our son.
He's a fairly talentless, but very, very intelligent mage who solves mysteries and does dirty work on behalf of these people who have blackmailed him into taking the very dangerous position of Lord of the Clock Tower. Okay, so I need to do a little bit of explaining.
I'm steepling my fingers.
Again, these are all little things that are referenced in the visual novels, but are all expounded upon here. So there's in London, they call it the Clock Tower. They mean Big Ben. Within Big Ben.
Oh, I didn't even realize. I never thought about that. So it's literally Big Ben?
Yeah, it's just Big Ben.
Fucking fate.
I don't know if they actually hang out in Big Ben. I don't think they do, but they might.
I demand that be the case.
In London, you have the main school where mages go to learn magecraft. But you also have this organisation called the Mages Association, which is like the authority on all magecraft in the world. And it's run by 12 families. So each family puts up a lord who takes one of the seats of this like council that runs everything. That's the setting of most of this story. Is Waver is a guy who got sort of forced into taking the position of a lord. Now the other thing about mages, like I mentioned, is that they're all assholes. They're all scheming pricks. That's just basically the way the world works. So being a lord is quite dangerous because the lord is someone who's looking to like use you, take your seat, maybe kill you. So yeah, Waver's got to deal with that as well as, everything else he's dealing with. Now, in terms of the origins of the series, yeah, like Cube said, this spun out of Fate Zero, which was a spin-off of the original novels. It's like a prequel to the novels about the Grail War that took place previously. Again, it was something that was sort of covered a little bit in the original visual novels and is very relevant to that story. Nasu, the guy who runs all of Fate, is responsible for all of it. He's buddies with one of our favourite writers, Geno Ribucci.
Boy.
And apparently they're just buddies. And like Nasu had wanted to expand. This is back when Fate was just the visual novel. He'd wanted to expand it out into other stories. And apparently him and Gen talked about creating Zero like while in the middle of a tabletop role-playing game. Because they're just fucking nerds.
Yes, with the Durarara guy.
Yeah.
I want to watch them do that. That's adorable.
Yeah.
God damn it, that's so cute.
So they came up with the idea of doing a prequel to the visual novels, and Gen went away and wrote that with Nasu's help. Even when other people are writing Fate stories, Nasu was usually pretty heavily involved because in all of the way Fate works is kept in his head. And he'll like give you details and information, and they'll work out the plot and change things to make sure it all, in giant air quotes, makes sense. And Waver was this character in Fate Zero. I'll explain his whole deal in a minute. Now the thing was, Gen didn't actually have any plans for Waver beyond the story of Fate Zero, other than like he survives the story, which is not what you can say for all of the masters in that story. But while he was working on it, Nasu decided that he was going to go on to be a famous lord in the Clock Tower by the time the original VNs take place, which is like 10 years later. So I think before Zero actually got released, there was like a character information book that got published that had some info about Lord El-Melloi, but it doesn't tell you that that's who Waver's going to be. All they established about him is that he's a famous Lord of the Clock Tower and he really likes Japanese RPG games. That was all you learned.
God, this fucking tangled web.
It's funny because Gen had already written book 1 of Fate Zero by that point, so he had to go back and work in why Waver likes Japanese RPGs, which was a detail I liked. Let me explain who Waver is. I'll just really quickly recap what happens in Zero. So Waver,
spoilers?
At the time of Zero, which is 10 years before the main story, he is a cocky student at the Clock Tower who wanted to prove himself. Now, in terms of being a mage, their talent is based on their intelligence and their ability to pull off spells, but it's also based on the actual amount of magical power they have within themselves. It's like an inherent thing. So like, if you go back to the original VNs, you got Shiro, who doesn't come from a long line of mages and his magical power is pretty weak. And then you've got Rin, who comes from a very long line of mages and their family is extremely intelligent. She has tons of magical power, and that's not something you can change about yourself. Waver is like Shiru in that he is a mage. He has the ability to pull off spells and stuff, but his magical power is very, very low. So he's not like a star student or anything, but he is very smart. So his lecturer, a guy called Kenneth, sort of regularly humiliates him. He wants to prove himself to Kenneth and everyone else. He learns that Kenneth is going to participate in the Grail War.
Crucially, his name's Kenneth El-Melloi, right?
Yeah, he's Kenneth El-Melloi, yeah.
Eyebrows.
So in order to participate in the Grail War, you need to be able to summon a servant. And in order to summon a servant, you need a relic that was connected to them from back in the day. Kenneth had obtained a piece of Iskander, or Alexander the Great's mantle, like his cape, basically. And he was going to use that to summon Iskander, who's like would be a very powerful servant. Waver steals it and borrows some money and fucks off to Japan and decides he's going to participate himself. Now, it's one of the best parts of Fate Zero is Waver and Iskander's relationship, because like Waver kind of gravely miscalculates things because he has absolutely no control over Iskander. Iskander just kind of does what he wants and Waver is dragged along for the ride. But they have this really fun relationship where like Waver's a huge grump about it and is just pissed off that this isn't going the way he wanted. But Iskander's like such this sort of force of nature that it really, like they have this almost fatherly son relationship, wouldn't you say?
It's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got grumpy baby boy and you got big raucous dad. And they definitely bring a lot of fun to what would otherwise be like a complete misery fest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're maybe the only fun characters in the whole show. Now, spoilers. Iskander is kind of limited by the fact that Waver is not a powerful mage because servants draw power from the mage they're summoned by. And because Waver doesn't have much power to begin with, Iskander can't really go all out. He's very similar to Saber in the original VNs in that sense. So basically, Iskander doesn't make it. He doesn't win the war. By the end of the story, Waver's kind of a changed person because he learns a lot from Iskander about what it is to be a man, all that sort of stuff. Goes through a whole growth thing. So like I said, Gen didn't have any plans for what happens to Waver after the story. But this other author called Makoto Sando, like several years later, had talked to Nasu at some point about writing something in the Fate universe because Nasu wanted to do more spin-offs. Like he enjoyed the idea of expanding out the franchise into other sort of areas.
Yeah.
Makoto at some point asked Nasu, "Hey, has anyone got any plans to expand out Lord El-Melloi's character?" And Nasu was like, "I don't. Do you?"
Ooh, rubbing his hands together. Mm.
Yeah. So Makoto took the character and what happened to him in the Grail War and created and sort of fleshed out Lord El-Melloi. It's such a fucking good portrait, and also a really good example of taking this, basically taking a character that already had like a completed journey and then putting him 10 years later or so and saying, well, how did that affect them and how does that affect who they are now? This is the cool thing about a really big franchise like this, where you can do something like that. It's always interesting to see to me.
Yeah.
Also, in the first book, Gen does a little commentary, like a 3-page thing. He talks about how he was very nervous about the idea. He didn't know how to feel about the idea of someone taking Waver and rewriting them because he really loved Waver.
Mm.
But he just said he was so pleased with how the book turned out. And he was, this is the thing about Gen. He's a scary looking dude, but like every time you read an interview with him or whatever, he just seems like the nicest fucking guy.
That's all these fucking guys. Yeah, it's like, we write the darkest, craziest shit. Oh, we just had a good time together. Thanks everyone. You all did your best.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Yeah, he's the same as that horror writer. What's his name?
Oh, Junji Ito. But Junji Ito also looks like a friend. He's very friend-shaped. Gen Urobuchi looks like someone who's in the Yakuza.
But yeah, he's just like, he was so complimentary about the job Makoto did on this and like how he's really looking forward to reading all the next books. And it's just so cool. I'm so glad that someone took my son and raised him. And it's just,
Yeah.
So yeah, the idea is after the war, because he's a changed man and has a sense of responsibility now, the other problem is that he's also carrying all this guilt. Like he carries all this guilt towards his former mentor, Kenneth, who was killed in the Grail War. The 4th Grail War, I should say. The Grail War in the VNs is the 5th. The one in Zero is the 4th. So I should probably establish that.
Yeah, the one that Waver was in, that Kenneth was supposed to have Iskander in. He didn't get Iskander, and so he got jobbed.
Yeah, he had to get a different servant. He probably wasn't as powerful as Iskander. Who did get... I mean, okay, so here's the thing. Waver carries all this guilt towards Kenneth because from Waver's perspective, if Kenneth had Iskander, he would have stood a much better chance of winning the Grail War. I think that based on like what you actually know about Kenneth in Zero, I think that's arguable. Kenneth might have just been stuffed no matter what happened.
He is a shitman, and he did deserve to die.
He didn't deserve to die, but he was like...
I think he kind of deserved to die. He was a real shitman.
He was a real shitman, but like I think like one of the other fun parts of Zero is this bit where Kenneth knows that Saber's master is coming for him, And he's in this apartment building where he's set up all these magical magecraft traps, and he's spent all this money and used all these resources to make this place fucking impenetrable. And Kerry, who's Saber's master, just blows up the building.
It's very good.
It's great, but it's also a demonstration of, I don't know if Kenneth was really cut out for this. I don't think he would have won no matter what.
He's like one of the most like generic mage, the kind of mage that you hear about in Fate. He is, just completely full of himself and has like no sense of practicality.
Yeah. That's a big part of the way they tend to characterize mages. And also is the thing that comes to set Waver apart, is that one of the ways that he's smarter than most mages is that he's got his head outside of magecraft as well. Now, the other person that Waver is carrying a ton of guilt towards is Iskander, because one of the things about a Grail War is that if you and your servant win, you both get to make a wish. And what a lot of servants will often want to wish for is the chance to exist in the modern world. Like, Iskander had plans to conquer the world once again if he manages to make it through the Grail War. There's that great bit where he's watching the news and he sees Bill Clinton and he's like, yes, this man is very powerful. He will clearly be my greatest enemy.
He will be my greatest foe since Darius III. This fucking anime rendering of Bill Clinton is the best that ever happened.
Obviously, because Iskander didn't win, he didn't get that chance. And again, Waver sees this as kind of his fault. Because first of all, he's not a powerful mage, and second of all, he was so not really ready for the war.
And third of all, he doesn't know that the Grail's fucking horseshit.
Well, I mean, there's that, but we can get into that. The way he sees it, this was also his fault, that Iskander didn't get to live up to the thing he wanted to do. So, because he's now ridden with guilt, after a bit of travelling around the world, he goes back to London and takes over Lord El-Melloi's classroom. Now, God, this is... I only just figured this out like half an hour ago. Each family in the clock tower, all 12 of them, all teach a separate class, right? But it's like a university. Like it's stupidly, sillily like a university.
Yeah.
There's 12 classes. Each family takes a different class. When you arrive at the Mage Tower, you do general fundamentals, then you do individual fundamentals, and then you can pick a speciality, like spiritual evocation, mineralogy, zoology, law, botany, astrology, creation curses, archaeology, or you can do modern magecraft theory, which is the one that's like kind of looked down upon.
It's just like Harry Potter. Wow, they must have been so like Harry Potter.
It's an element of that, but if Harry Potter was like super evil, like if it was just a bad place to be.
I mean, have you read those books?
I will say I feel like Fate is probably more trans-friendly than Harry Potter, but anyway.
That's a mixed bag. You just opened a mixed bag there, my friend.
It's a mixed bag, but at least
it's mixed and not 100% shit.
Yeah. The thing about the classrooms, though, is that the classrooms, the particular class you teach isn't tied to your family. So when Kenneth died, a class was freed up and became abandoned. But the thing was, he was the teacher of mineralogy, I think.
It makes sense with his metal shit.
No, sorry, he was the Lord of Mineralogy, but he was the teacher of the spiritual evocation class. So when he died, someone else snapped up spiritual evocation, and modern magecraft theories was abandoned, and that class just wasn't run anymore. So what Waver does is he goes back to London and borrows some money to buy the El-Melloi classroom. But like the classroom doesn't have because like I said, the classroom doesn't have a particular class attached to it. He has to take the class that no one else wants.
You have to buy a classroom?
Yeah, you had to buy the rights to it off someone else.
Okay.
So he buys the rights to the classroom and goes away and teaches the only class that's left, the one that no one wants, which is modern magecraft theories. And he does this because he feels like he's responsible for Kenneth's death, and he learned a lot at the clock tower, and he doesn't want other students to miss out on that opportunity.
Wait, was that before or after the El-Melloi, the blonde girl?
This is before. This is like so...
Okay.
This is only like a year after the Fourth Grail War. So he's teaching the class for a few years. He gains a reputation as a very good teacher because, like, aside from anything else, he is very smart. And he's good at explaining this stuff. And also because he's got some experience in the world outside of magecraft, he's pretty good at, like his students tend to do well because he manages to give them, like, a slightly better head on their shoulders. So he's doing well enough that he comes to the attention of a girl called Rains. Now, she is now the successor to Kenneth and the head of what's left of the El-Melloi family. So the thing about mage families is there's like the main family and then there's little branch families that are kind of attached to them. She's from a branch family. Kenneth burned up a lot of the El-Melloi family's resources in going after a Grail War, and obviously it was all lost. So the family's in a terrible state, but Rains has managed to take over what's left of it. And she's like 12.
She's a real precocious youngster.
Yeah, I quite like her, but I can get into her character more in a minute. But basically, she kidnaps Waver and essentially guilts him into a couple of things. She tells him that he has to take on the family's debt because they owe a fuckload of money to everyone, and now it's Waver's personal responsibility. And he also has to take her place as a lord of the clock tower, like the lord that represents the El-Melloi family. Now, she says he's doing that because she's not old enough to take the position yet, but what you eventually learn is that she never has any intention of taking on the position because it's a lot easier to manipulate shit from behind the scenes. Makes her less of a target. So basically, yeah, basically he's standing in the very dangerous position for her, took on all their debt, and is also, because like he owes them so much money, he's also sort of like forced to do her bidding in terms of fixing problems for other people in order to earn favors or cash. What's sort of fun, like nice about Waver is she doesn't really have any genuine way of blackmailing him, but he just kind of does it out of a sense of honor.
Yeah.
Pretty much just because he feels guilty.
He's a nice boy.
He is a nice boy.
He's a nice boy.
So yeah, at the start of Case Files, that's the situation he's in. He's in this dangerous position being a lord of the clock tower. He has this class to teach, and he also has to go around solving mysteries and doing jobs for these people that like basically have him by the balls.
He's a busy boy.
Yeah. He has a really deep inferiority complex, obviously. One of the main things about his character at this point is that he knows he's never going to fully master magecraft because he just does not have the raw talent. Like, he doesn't have the power. But at the same time, he probably understands magecraft better than any other mage on the planet. Because, like, he's just done a lot of research, he just knows a lot. So that's kind of his curse, is that he would love to fucking master the shit, but he just can't. And he's surrounded by people, like students and other mages at the clock tower, who have the raw talent he doesn't. And it's deeply frustrating to him. Occasionally takes it out on his students. Like I said, he's also a really good teacher. He doesn't recognize it, but like it's made clear in the books and a little bit in the anime. He's like a deeply influential person, like not just in the clock tower, but in the world of mages in general. Mostly because, like I said, most mages are assholes, right? Like, they're all people who were just trying to obtain this incredible source of power. And the rules are sort of set so that as long as you don't like expose magecraft to regular people, you can do whatever you want. You can kill people. You can perform horrible experiments. It's all fine as long as no one finds out.
Yeah.
So mages tend to be pretty unscrupulous people. But because he's a good person, the students he's taught, he's sort of like all of the mages that go through his class. A lot of them end up getting like sort of basically implanted with a moral core. One of his students, who's named Flat Escardos.
Yes, fucking Flat.
Fucking fate names. At one point, like talks about how like if it wasn't for Sir, we'd all end up being deviants. That's kind of the effect he's having on the world of mages. Is he's making them like not as shitty as they could be.
He's teaching them the power of love.
Yeah. The other thing about him is that, like he was when he was a teenager, he's still kind of a grumpy arsehole. Like, he's not a very pleasant person, and mostly because, like I say, being Waver is suffering. He's surrounded by people who have what he wants but will never have. He's under the thumb of a really cruel stepsister, and he lives and works in the den of complete assholes. Like, it's not a fun life.
He's so beleaguered, this boy.
Yeah, but he does his best. The other major character in Case Files, who is introduced in Case Files, is a character called Grey. Now, here's the thing about Fate franchises. Every time you start a new Fate franchise, if it doesn't have Saber in it, you have to have a Saber face.
If it doesn't have Saber in it, you have to have a Saber in it.
Yes. You have to have someone who looks like Saber. Now, it's dumb. The first time it was done was with the first spin-off Fate Extra, which was, it was teased for a long time with this person who looked like, it was an outline of a person who looked like Saber, but then it turned out to be Nero, the Emperor Nero, who personality-wise is almost the opposite of Saber, but looks exactly the same. She has the same haircut, she's got the same face, she's just drawn by a different artist. And that was the first time it was done. It was like a tease.
That was like the worst time, actually. Because, yeah, the twist was, what does it mean? Nothing. Ha 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 ha. Anyway.
Yeah, basically.
Cool game.
Every Fate franchise has a Saber face of some sort. Like, Apocrypha had Mordred, who's kind of the Saber face.
Well, and Jean. So it kind of had two.
Yeah, that's true.
I always kind of consider Jane more or less a kind of saber-facey.
What I find interesting and quite satisfying about Grey is that Grey is the first Saber face I've seen where there is a genuinely interesting justification for her Saber faceness. And they actually used the fact that we kind of have to put a Saber face into the franchise as an opportunity to do something interesting. So Grey's deal. Grey is a young girl about Saber's age, or a bit older, maybe like sort of late teens. She looks just like Saber, except she has grey hair and wears like just monochrome clothes and a hood. Now, she belongs to an ancient tribe who manage Britain's oldest graveyard. Like, it's a graveyard that's like centuries and centuries old. And traditionally, this family, like, they're connected to Magecraft and they deal with spirits and the dead. That's kind of their deal. The other thing they are, though, is distant descendants of King Arthur from way back in that period.
I'm still considering Fate lore. I don't quite understand how that works.
They're not a direct descendant of Saber, of King Arthur, because obviously King Arthur never had any children.
But there's Mordred.
Well, yeah, that doesn't count. She didn't have any children either.
Do you know that?
Well, let's assume. I mean, Mordred wasn't around for very long.
Assume nothing. It's Fate. She begat her own saber face. It's saber faces all the way down.
My point being that, like, they're not direct descendants of King Arthur. They're indirect descendants. So they're like descendants of one of Arthur's parents, like a cousin or something. But still, they're connected to the family. As such, they're also the keeper of one of King Arthur's weapons, Rongo Miniet, which is the lance at the end of the world. If you're familiar with Fate Go, you might know what Rongo Miniet is.
Oh, it's a giant ice cream cone.
Yes, it is the giant wicker ice cream cone. It's a thing that exists as part of the King Arthur myth. It's a sacred lance that was given to Arthur by fairies. King Arthur's connected to fairies. It's where he gets a lot of his magic. Mm-hmm. What Rongo Miniet actually is the anchor that holds the two halves of the world together. That's like within the myth. That's what it is. And whenever you manifest it, whenever you actually use the lance, you're really just using a tiny speck of the power of this anchor. Huh. But the thing is, like, because it's so unbelievably powerful, the fairies placed a lot of seals on it that dictate its use. Things like it's not being used against humanity, it's not being used against fairies, it's being used in the search for truth, that sort of stuff. Like, it's usually, I think all of the seals line up with sort of the characteristics of one of the Knights of the Round Table.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's quite cool. And basically, for every seal you're able to satisfy, the lance becomes more powerful. So, like, say you're only able to pull off one seal, it's only so powerful. If you're able to pull off all 12 or whatever, it can destroy cities.
If you're only able to rave or to grave, maybe not deprave.
Yeah, Grey has a funny noble phantasm line, essentially. The thing is, though, despite the fact that they have Rongo Miniet, no one in the family can use it because none of them are Arthur. King Arthur's the only one who can actually use the thing. They just have it. So one of the things this family's been doing for years, like centuries, via magecraft fuckery, is attempting to birth a person who resembles Arthur so precisely that she can trick the lance into recognizing her as Arthur and allow it to be wielded by her. Because, like, obviously, it's this incredibly powerful thing, and it'd be great if they could actually fucking use it.
Stupid lance. This isn't even King Arthur. It just looks like her.
It's a bit silly, but yeah. Over the centuries since King Arthur's existence, his family has never succeeded. Like, not even come close. So Grey, like all children in this family, was an attempt to recreate Arthur, unsuccessful. She lived her own life for about 10 years, in which time she showed a lot of talent as a Sibyl, which is a person, not a mage, but a person who was good at dealing with spirits. Mm. That's kind of her own thing. What changed? Her life changed, though, when the Fourth Grail War happened, the one that Waver was involved in.
Everything changed.
The thing that changed was that King Arthur was summoned. Saber was summoned in the Fourth Grail War by Kerry. And her summoning resonated with the person in this family who was the closest to being a decent replica of Saber, which was Grey. Overnight, she went through this painful, sort of kind of body horror-ish transformation where her bones, like, broke and reformed, like, over the course of an evening, and by morning, she was a perfect replica of King Arthur.
I don't know if I want to spoil the best part about it. I want to joke about it, but I don't know if I should avoid spoiling
it. Yeah, she's a perfect replica of King Arthur, right down to her hair.
I was going to say part of the body horror is, oh, my hair! Oh, no, it's forming the bun! It hurts so much, the bun!
This is like, here's the thing. I think this whole story is really cool and how it affects Grey's character is really cool. But the trouble with Saber faces is they don't look that much like Saber if you don't have the bun.
That's the problem with anime.
So for some reason, she has to have the fucking bun.
Tell them about the bun and the ahoge.
Yeah, this is the thing about a Saber face is they have to have the same hair. There's never even an attempted justification as to why Grey would style her hair like Saber when she hates the fact that she looks like Saber.
It's just because it's anime and they're like, shit, we can't actually establish that she looks like Saber. There's no way to establish that because she's gonna have a fucking anime face. Because the funny thing about calling them Saber faces is, like, technically it's not really Saber face, it's more like saber general design hair
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Short, has that bun of hair, everything, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So my headcanon is that the hair does that on its own and she can't undo it.
Yeah. It's gotta be.
Now, anyway, so getting back to the story. Obviously, this wasn't a fun experience for Grey, but everyone in her family is overjoyed because after centuries of trying, this has finally fucking worked. And Grey can wield Rongo-Midiad. Like, she's able to use it. Now, the thing is that now she's expected to fulfill this role, to essentially become King Arthur. And Grey really doesn't like this idea because it essentially means erasing her entire personality and like her entire sense of being in order to become this other thing. You know, obviously for anyone that would probably be a scary kind of thing. Also, Grey is a fairly shy, low confidence person. So the idea of like, okay, you're going to be King Arthur now is kind of pretty terrifying, understandably.
It's rough stuff.
So the fact that everyone else was overjoyed by the fact that she now looks like this, she now hates her appearance. She had a chance encounter with Waver when he came to the village looking for a talented Sibyl, because he must have been dealing with some case that involved spirits. They don't actually go into a great deal of detail about how they met. They only sort of touch on the generalities.
I'm just imagining a mob psycho situation.
Yeah. She was immediately drawn to Waver because he was the first person she'd ever met who reacted badly to her face.
Fucking anime shit.
So as far as Waver knows, and this is what he's been told, Saber killed Cainith in the Fourth Grail War. And that's not actually what happens. Like, you know, it's actually Saber's master that does it, and Saber had played no part in it, didn't even know it was happening.
I guess her team did.
Yeah, but he thought that she actually slew Cainith herself.
Aha.
So obviously he sees someone who looks exactly like Saber and just like, fuck. Anyway, so they sort of immediately form this attachment, and he learns about her situation. And once he learns that what a kind of shitty situation she's in, he smuggles her out of there. Now, the thing is that, like, okay. This is the thing between I watched the anime first, and then I went away and read the light novels, which haven't been officially translated into English like a lot of Fate stuff. There's a fan's translation that's translated the first 4 books.
Fans are doing so much work.
In the pilot episode of the anime, Waver just straight up tells Grey to keep her hood on because he hates her face. But Grey, for some reason, is fine with that. The trouble is they never completely explain what the go is there, and it just makes Waver look like a prick.
Yeah, and then she pulls the hood over and she like smiles like yay, and I'm like, that's a bit fucking goofy ass anime horseshit.
In the books, they explain what the actual situation is that when she agrees to help Waver with this particular thing, and then also like, you know, with him getting her out of this village, one of the conditions she says is just please keep disliking my face. Because she was so relieved that someone else finally did. And like also like I said, Grey's general character, Grey's base assumption about everyone is that everyone hates her. Like, another one of Waver's students, who's very talented, Feen Gestalt, another terrible name, is clearly infatuated with Grey. His mage thing is he's connected to animal spirits, so he can smell her. And there's a slightly creepy thing where he keeps talking about how lovely her smell is and stuff. And
he's a doggo.
He's a dog boy. But like because of the way he looks at he's like stares at Grey and makes odd faces, Grey just assumes that he hates her. Like, Grey assumes that he really, really despises her, and that makes her feel very bad when it's obvious to anyone else that he's like...
Wait, but does that please her or displease her?
No, that displeases her.
Okay,
she feels bad about this.
Like, this girl's got some complexes.
Yeah, Grey's got some stuff going on. But anyway, the point was that she assumed that Waver hated her face. Waver doesn't actually hate her face, he was just surprised. But because she asks him to continue disliking her face, he does it for her sake. He doesn't actually hate her face. He doesn't care about her face. It's just that that's just something she asked him to do.
The things we sacrifice for the Woms.
It's just so funny because it's like, this is one of those things that I really wish the anime had just defined that a little better. They're the main pair that are at the heart of the entire series. And I mean, Grey hanging out with Waver works out pretty well in his favour. And also in terms of the structure of a general Fate story, because Grey is functionally a servant. She's not actually a servant, but she has a level of power roughly equivalent to one. Yeah,
it's funny how they managed to kind of like work in that exact same dynamic without any of that the actual summoning or whatnot.
Yeah. But it's kind of nice as well because they don't function exactly the same way in terms of the dynamic. Like, she calls him Shisho, which is like, I think you explained to me, is kind of like a type of master.
Yeah, it's a master in terms like a master of a craft or a martial arts or whatnot. It's not like, master like the way a maid would call a master.
Yeah. And she's very devoted to him. And he, is very protective and caring of her and all that sort of stuff. But it's like it's clear that it's not like he has no actual way to magically control her or anything, like he would with the servant. The relationship runs a little bit deeper than that.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask. So is it ever treated like a theoretical romantic thing, or does it stay pretty like almost father-daughter-ish?
It's much more father-daughter-ish. It's never treated romantically, which I was quite happy with.
Wiping my brow.
Yeah. Waver in general does not seem interested in love or relationships at all. There's one mage I think it's kind of implied he might have had a fling with that he deeply regrets now, who's another major character in the series.
Wait, what? Oh, is it the blonde girl?
No, that's another one of his students.
Who is it?
I'll get to it.
My God.
So, anyway, they're the central two characters. We're now 45 minutes in. Right, so the structure.
Whose fault is this?
The structure of the books and the series is the kind of structured and themed like mysteries, like mystery novels. That's the aesthetic they're going for. That's the way the stories sort of play out. But they're not the sort of mysteries that you could actually figure out as you go along. Partly because, not all mystery novels function like that. Some of them do, but not everyone. They don't all do that. But also because, I've said this before, the thing about Fate is it's all about arse pulls. Anything that happens, any sort of plot beat or thing that happens in a Fate story, this goes back right to the original visual novels. Every time someone gets out of a situation you don't expect them to be in, it will be because of some newly introduced magical function that they have that you didn't know about and only learned about just at this moment. And that sounds like it could be bad writing, and sometimes it is, but the thing that Fate rides on, I think, is whether or not the arse pull is cool or amusing. Or,
and sometimes they're set up in a way that's like, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. And the big major mystery arc in the anime, the Rail Zeppelin story, I think once you learn what's actually going on, it does all kind of make sense. But there's zero chance of you being able to work it out beforehand. It is completely impossible. I mean, you go back right to the original visual novels. One of those things was the first servant fight you see when Archer is fighting Lancer, and there's this whole thing. You're watching the two of them fight, and Lancer has the advantage because he's got the longer weapon, and he's beating Archer back, and he knocks his swords away, and you're like, and the narrative is telling you, Archer's fucked. His swords have been knocked away, but then suddenly he has new swords. You didn't know Archer could do that. But the thing is, he can replicate infinite swords. It's that sort of stuff. And it's like,
wow, archers really are archers. The archer class really is made up of archers. That's it.
But that's one of those things. Cool, he can summon swords. That's cool. That's the thing. Part of enjoying Fate is going along with them, just sort of pulling out stuff you weren't aware of. That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, endless escalation. That's Fate.
Yeah. What's fun about case files is they almost acknowledge that as part of Waver's philosophy for deducing mysteries. So they have this, Waver has this great use of gratuitous English.
Hell yeah.
That he explains. So when dealing with mysteries, there is the who done it, and the how done it, and the why done it. Which So Waver's philosophy in working out who the culprit is in any mystery involving magecraft is that you have to ignore the who done it and how done it, as in what's the person's alibi and how was the murder pulled off. Because in magecraft, a mage can be in more than one place at a time, and there's infinite ways that you could use magecraft to do something cool, including murder someone. So,
but I feel like but why would you ignore the who done it? That's still important.
It's not the who done it in terms of who was the one who carried out the murder, because one, like I say, the one who physically carried out the murder can be in more than one place at once, so it's not like you can go by alibis or something to figure that out. And the other thing is that it's possible to mind control people in the Fate universe. So
it's not useful to know who done it in terms of figuring out what actually happened, because so much horse shit could have happened.
In terms of figuring out who's actually responsible. So the only thing you can work out, the only thing that Waver believes is worth figuring out is the why done it, which is what was the motive for killing this person and killing them in the way it was done. And again, that works like with the way Fate stories tend to work. It's all magic ass pulling and newly revealed rules. So the who done it and how done it actually don't make sense. It's a bit silly because obviously you can make up motives for anyone in a murder mystery. Like that's part of the fun. Is like, well, everyone could have had a reason for doing this. But generally, like in a lot of mysteries novels, you're hanging out for the reveal of the how and why it was done. And all of the case file stories I've seen, both the ones in the books and the anime, the reveal has usually been pretty fun. Particularly, I got to say, the second major story that covers two books books 2 and 3 in the Case Files one, the reveal of the how and why and everything at the end is fucking awesome. It's it was a really, really fun.
Okay, wait,
that was a really fun mystery.
So that's something I want to understand, because I watched the first 3 episodes of the show or something, and they had not yet gotten to the Rail Zeppelin thing that the show is named for. So the stuff that I watched. Oh yeah, you said that was an original thing in the anime with the astrological body part people, right?
Okay, yeah. So this is actually good, because this is what I was about to go into versus the books versus the anime.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. I watched the anime first, and after I watched it, I learned that the anime actually skips all of the events of the first 2 books, the first 3 books.
Damn.
Which is book 1 is its own story about this thing called the Castle of Separation, where this mage who is a magical tuner, who is a person that can fix a mage's magical crest, which is like a thing that's implanted in their body.
Magical tuna.
Yeah. All mages have magical crests, which is like a magical circuit that's implanted in your body that can be passed down generations. So they get more complex and powerful as you go. Mm-hmm. But they can get damaged, which is where a magical tuner comes in, who is a person who can fix a major circuit. Anyway, this mage was a tuner who has been killed, and there are all these mages turning up to his castle, the Castle of Separation, to try and nab all of his stuff. And it turns into this whole story. It's good. That's the first book.
Yeah, so you would say that it's good? It isn't the kind of thing where it's I can see why the show skipped this.
No, it's great. I think it's a cool story. Books 2 and 3 cover a different story again, which I also really enjoyed. Like I said, I fucking loved the ending of that one.
What the fuck, anime?
Well, but this is the thing, right? At first I was thrown that Case Files skips those books, but then when I went back and rewatched the series in preparation for this, I understand why they did that. Because of the stuff that's been translated, only books 4 and 5 cover the Rail Zeppelin story, but it's not finished. The fan who was doing a very good job translating these books has sort of stalled out, which is, that happens.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The Rail Zeppelin story takes 6 episodes to play out. There's no way, within the scope of the anime, asking people to hang on that long to do these 6-episode arcs right from the start, I think would have been a mistake. So what the people who did the anime instead, the first 6 episodes are all kind of case of the week type things. There's a couple that run over 1 episode, there's a couple that run over 2 or 2. And I'm actually really impressed in terms of how they picked up on all of the things you sort of are meant to learn about Waver and Grey and the way magic works in this system and the details of the clock tower and stuff, and weaved them into these totally original stories for the anime. Once I'd read the books, I could see all of the things that they were covering that you're meant to pick up on. The trouble is, it's just, again, Fate is, the lore is complex. There's a lot of it. And there's so much of it thrown at you in those stories that you're never quite sure. There's no way of knowing when something is important and when they're just talking magic nonsense.
Yeah, or if something's supposed to be okay, am I supposed to know what they're talking about, or is this still supposed to be mysterious bullshit at this point? I don't know.
Yeah, or is this something they're introducing for the first time? Because the other problem is, because there's not as much time in the anime as there is in the books, they just don't have enough time to get into the detail that makes some of these concepts interesting.
Yeah.
In the anime, they do very briefly explain who and what Grey is, but they don't have any time to get into how that shaped her personality, which is the interesting bit to me. In the second episode, there's a story that involves, Waver working out what happened to this Astromancer mage whose body got cut up. And at the end of it, you get the reveal of Grey's saber face, where her hood comes off and you see the hair. I
can't handle it. That was the funniest thing that's ever happened. It's so funny, Phoenix, because I didn't know she was hiding the bun under there, and then when it dramatically revealed that she has the bun, so she's Saber, it's just ah.
So it's funny because I guess I'm more willing to go along with Fate shit, because I saw that and went, oh, that's cool.
Wait, did you already know that she was supposed to be a Saber though?
No, that was when I learned as well, and I was like, oh. I thought it was great.
Now that I know about it, I'm it is pleasingly extra.
Yeah.
But it is just, there's just still something so funny about knowing, because you just know that it had to be a thing where they were how do we reveal that she's Saber? They're all fucking anime girls. And because I was oh hey, the wife isn't a Saber for once. That's kind of interesting. And I was haha, surprise, bitch, it's Saber.
See, this is the thing. I think you don't learn it necessarily about a backstory, but her being a replica of King Arthur, you learn about at the end of the first book.
Yeah.
Because you get, like with quite a few of these stories, you get to a stage where Waver's worked everything out, but now there's a big monster and he's like, great, this is your bit. And she goes, cool. and whips out a scythe and off she goes. Oh, see, fuck, I totally forgot to mention this.
Oh, yeah, and she'd also said the funny thing all before that. She was saying the silly chant, so it's just the best scene.
I should mention, Grey has another sort of companion with the personality, which is Rongo Midiad itself. In order to disguise the fact that it is Rongo Midiad, normally when she carries it around, it is just this little talking cube in a cage called Ad.
Hello, it's me. I'm a cube.
No, he doesn't. No, he has an awful male voice. And he's a shit. Like, but for years, but there's this thing where, like, because she was the only one who could talk to him when she was still in the village, for years he was her only friend. So they have this dynamic where, like, he's a turd, but they do know each other quite well, and he genuinely cares about her, even though he is a shit. But what's funny is that when she fights, she can turn Ad into this big scythe, or a number of different weapons. It can be a big hammer, he can be a big shield.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just knew scythe.
Yeah, when he's in those basic forms, he can talk, and he talks to her. But whenever she really goes high-powered with him and, like, undoes one of the seals, his personality disappears. And that's actually something you hear him say, is like, pseudo-personality suspended.
Oh, yeah.
Because his existence is completely just a disguise. It's kind of fun.
He's an AI.
The other thing he does is eat spells. He eats magic power, basically, and can spit it back out. That's his other sort of ability.
Okay.
So, even though she is a Saberface, her design and the stuff they do with the way she fights, like the way they describe it in the book, and then also the way you see it in the anime, it is fun and I think pretty individual.
Oh yeah, I do like her design. I always like scythes.
Yeah, and there is something cool about, like, this. Yeah, she's a Saberface, but her whole thing is actually dealing with, like, the dead. That's kind of, she exists on this point between the living and the dead, and, like, is able to speak to them, and yeah, it's fun. Now, but yeah, like I say, the
rave, deprave, grave for you, grave.
No, it's grave, rave, deprave.
What is the actual full thing? It's the best thing that's ever.
I'm pretty sure it's just grave, rave, deprave, grave me, grave for you, and then she kills you. That's like,
and especially because, you know, it's of course it's English and it's a Japanese person saying it, so I want to know what, like, did they think that sounds super fucking cool?
I don't know. I think it sounds cool.
Rave, crave, deprave.
I think it sounds pretty cool.
It's scatting. I mean,
yeah.
Why was she saying rave? Like, what is each part of it? It's silly. I declare it silly.
One of the other things the anime doesn't get into, have enough time to really get into, is that, which the books do, which again, when I was talking about how, like what I like about this is just taken a chunk of the Fate universe and sort of gone into detail, is that the books, and the anime to some extent, but the books in particular do a really good job of exploring different concepts of, like, what sort of mages you can have, and also explaining, for I feel like the first time properly in any Fate property, how magecraft works, what the basis of magecraft is. Like, there's a bit of it in Heaven's Feel, and there's a better explanation of it here. The general concept behind magecraft is that because human souls are magic, as in a human soul is made up of stuff that is taken from the root, which is the source of all magic. The way this functions with magecraft is that things that humans place faith in or believe are real, concepts like the zodiac and heaven and hell and all that sort of stuff, like, you know, sort of cultural concepts, they have power in magecraft rituals. So that's like with astromancy, for example, as one of the schools of magecraft, you can carry off spells based around the zodiac and planets and that sort of stuff, because that's a thing that a lot of humans have in their heads, and so that's a way of sort of drawing on magic.
I'm honestly surprised none of the rest of the franchise got into that as much, unless it happens in, like, Heaven's Feel or whatnot, because, like, it definitely checks out with how everything works that you see.
Yeah, and it does kind of make sense. I mean, it might have been something Nasu had in mind at first. It's possibly a backfill in terms of, like, previously we were just using, like, you know, cool sounding concepts. But, like, if you explain it as, oh, well, anything that humans believe in sufficiently has magical power, that all sort of works. But yeah, I think it's probably something they just never had a reason to talk about in detail before.
Yeah.
Now, again, the other thing is, like I said, they explore a lot of different concepts of what sort of mages you get. I mentioned it before, probably the third most important character in this series is Reigns, who is the current head of the El-Melloi family and this person who was essentially forcefully adopted Waver as her older brother. Now, Reigns is an interesting character because she's got a rotten personality. One of the books, the first half of it is written from her perspective. Oh. And because like all light novels, they're always written like first person.
Right.
In terms of her rotten personality, she's basically half ruined Waver's life, fucks with him constantly in different ways. And she kind of gets off on watching people made uncomfortable and suffer.
I'm going to say, you say she has a rotten personality. I think she's just got a sassy anime, cool girl personality. You're going to love this wife.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what she's playing off. But in terms of you were actually judging her, like, and she sort of acknowledges this too. She's not a very good person, basically. Like she's very willing to sort of exploit people and use them and stuff. But okay, so in year 10 in English literature, we studied the prologue to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, right?
Okay.
I don't know if anyone has ever read any of that. The reason we studied the prologue was because there was a lot you could learn about Chaucer's use of language when he was describing these different characters. In Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, it's a story of all these different people in sort of like, 11th century English society going on a pilgrimage. And the actual tales are all of them telling different stories, but the prologue is just Chaucer describing each person. And there's two religious figures who we really get stuck into in the way that the language he uses and the way he sort of subtly describes what awful people they are. But there's also this character of the sailor who he acknowledges like will kill people, at sea, like they make people walk the plank, they do that sort of shit.
Yeah.
But he's very measured and he's very measured and careful and not judgmental in the way he describes what the sailor does.
Okay, but is he a writer? Is he writer class? You said he's a sailor, so I assume he's summonable as writer class.
Okay, so the point I'm making is that like the reason that Chaucer wasn't judging him harshly was because he acknowledged that the sailor lives in this very different world where things are much more brutal. So it's not like someone who doesn't live in that world can really judge them. I feel like Rains is like the writer taking the opportunity to do the same thing with mages, because while she is this rotten person who will exploit people and use them and do all these underhanded things, the thing that we've known from the start about the world of mages is that it is a really brutal world, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where you have to do those sort of things if you're going to survive. And this is just a world that she was born into. Like, when Cainith died, she was quite young, but she was also put in this position where, because she was like a descendant in one of these important families, if she didn't seize power, someone was probably going to eventually kill her in order to make sure she didn't seize power later when she was older. So basically, like, while she is a shitty person, that's just who she has to be if she wants to live. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is like, that's a cool thing to sort of explore in terms of like, mage's ability. Because the other thing is that like in the books, and I think in one episode in the anime, they do let her and Grey spend a bit of time together. And you can see that she's not like, she doesn't take much pleasure in messing with Grey. She just can't. You can tell that there's a decent person buried in there.
Oh, yeah.
But she's sort of been shaped by the world she exists in. And like, that's an interesting thing to talk about within a mage's, within that world, I reckon.
I figure she's just a pretty typical Steppy Ojo-sama.
Well, there's that too, yes. But you could just have her be that, and that'd be the end of it. But I think it's interesting that the Makoto Sendo sort of went to an effort to try and like work in an explanation for why she's like that and justify it, which is like what I like in general about Case Files, is that he sort of attempts to come up with an in-universe reason for why they are behaving the way they behave, like these anime tropes.
Yeah.
There's also Luvia, who has a longer name that I'm not going to even bother trying to pronounce it.
Oh, that's the blonde curls girl?
Yeah. Now, she's a mage who existed in the canon well before Zero. Luvia Gelita Edelfelt, sorry. She was a character who was, I think she gets a couple of mentions occasionally in the VNs, the original VNs, and she pops up here and there elsewhere. But previously to Case Files, she had always been used as kind of a comic relief character. Like, she's just this haughty Ojo-sama mage who's very powerful but is also like a fool. One other thing that Gen called out that he really enjoyed was that Makoto took her in the first book and turned her into a proper character. Like, her and Waver team up together at a certain point in the story, and you get a sense of how powerful she is, and that she is quite smart. And in the end, she sort of ropes Waver into giving her personal lectures.
Oh, eyebrows.
She's played as this character who is going to eventually be one of like the great mages of the next generation. Like, she's just that fucking powerful. Like, her family's deal is that they're sort of predatory mages in the sense that they just go around finding people who own magical shit who are in a weak position and nicking it. Like, she's often called a hyena by different characters.
Wait, like they just steal it? Or they're like loan sharks?
They're kind of like loan sharks, yeah. They find ways to obtain shit, and they just have lots of... that's where their wealth comes from. The style of magecraft they use is kind of looked down upon by other mages, because it's all sort of I think that they talk about in the first book how it's like, and it's an adaptation of Nordic runes. They sort of brought rune magic back. But because it's all kind of a modern thing, like mages are very sort of traditional, so they're also going, so she's sort of this character that everyone sort of goes, yuck, but they also can't like deny the fact that she's extremely powerful.
Now, is having a metal maid servant, is that a traditional?
Yeah, Reigns has a, Kenneth in Zero had this magic metal that he could use as a shield. Reigns inherited it and adjusted it with Waver's help to turn it into a maid that can follow her around and like form weapons and stuff. It's very cool.
I just love that it's like, okay, so he has a ball of metal. Now, how do we make that into a wife? Did it? Yes.
I mean, she's not really a wife. She has no personality. She's just a golem.
Are you saying that you don't think that some people are into that?
I mean, probably.
You think some people are into that?
One of the side thing about Luvia that they kept up with was that she's really into pro wrestling.
Hell yeah.
This is the thing. In particular, the episode where she gets a lot of focus in the anime, there's a bit where she ends up pulling out some pro wrestling moves on a bunch of golems, and that's pretty cool. There's other little characters who show you different aspects of some other mages. Like there's a guy called Calls, who's this nice enough kid who only became a mage because his much more powerful older sister dropped out of the position. So he spent most of his teenage years surviving assassination attempts because people were trying to kill him so his sister would come back and take up the position because she was more powerful and would guarantee more success for the family, stuff like that.
That's rough. What about that fucking girl with the pink hair and the eye patch? What's her fucking deal?
Okay, Yvette, she's sort of more involved later in the story. Her actual character is annoying. She wants to fuck Waver. And that's all she talks about.
Yeah, I remember her, like, the last episode, I think that I watched the anime, she suddenly showed up, and I was like, who the fuck is this weird idol girl? Why is she here? Why does she look like that?
She's kind of fun sometimes, but mostly she's a pain in the ass. Her thing is that she's from a family that specializes in dual magecraft and mystic eyes. I'll need to explain what mystic eyes are in a bit. But the other thing functionally within the story, which is something you don't learn until a bit later in the anime, but you learn immediately upon meeting her in the books, is that she is a spy sent from one of the other factions in the clock tower to kind of keep an eye on Waver.
Done.
And she's quite open about the fact that that's what she's doing, but Waver doesn't have any choice apart from to keep her in the class. So, yeah. So, like, she's basically a known enemy.
Yeah, someone just posted her. Look at this shit. You can't just show this girl sitting in a classroom and be like, oh, this is a normal student. This definitely isn't a very crucial character.
I mean, yes, but I kind of like that she's that fucking extra, I guess.
Is she fate extra?
The other major mage, which is also an interesting, like, in any mystery novel, you have to have the other source of authority that can, like, investigate things and thwart the main detective.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, in this, it's a character called Hishiri Arashino, who is this female mage who's Japanese. You know that because she always wears kimonos. She has some sort of past relationship with Waver. Waver really doesn't like her.
Ah.
But she comes from a section of the clock tower called Policies, which is... It's like one of the 12 families that sits above all of the families and is basically there to keep all of them in check or punish mages if they break the rules. And so they're quite powerful and everyone there has their own sort of mysterious agenda, which Hishiri does as well. Like, she's obviously up to something and has a habit of, like, manipulating Waver into investigating and figuring shit out so she can sort of swoop in and grab some things that she wants out of that case. It's that kind of a relationship.
Aha.
Yeah. That's fun. That's the world. That's the characters. Now... I'm going to attempt, because Cube asked me to explain the actual long-ass mystery story in the anime, which is Rail Zeppelin, the Rail Zeppelin arc.
Magic train. Tell me about the magic train.
Now, here's the thing. It's a very complicated story. I can't tell you the story beat by beat because you'll just be completely lost.
Okay.
But once you actually get your head around what it is and what's going on, it's actually pretty cool. Now, okay, so but before we can really get into Rail Zeppelin, you do need to fully understand what the deal with the Grail War and the Greater Grail is.
Oh, damn.
This is one of those things where, like, you lose a bit if you haven't read the original visual novels. And especially, I mean, obviously you lose a lot if you haven't seen Zero. You really should see Zero before you watch Case Files because a good understanding of Waver's character is kind of important to this show.
Yeah.
But Yeah, in order to make sense of the Rael Zeppelin story, you need to understand the war in the Greater Grail. So one of the things you learn at the end of the first visual novel route, the Fate route, is that the Grail is a sham. It's meant to be this thing that can grant any wish, but what you learn at the end of the Fate route is that it has been corrupted by a particularly evil servant that was sucked into it. And it's now this corrupt evil thing that if you can ask for a wish if you want, but it's going to destroy shit on a level that equals whatever it is you're wishing for.
What? You make a wish, but it doesn't turn out well? What? There's a concept.
And what you learn at the end of the Heaven's Feel route, which is like the final route of the original visual novels, is that it's actually an even bigger sham than you think it is. So the Grail was actually set up by these three families who wanted a way to reach the root. Because generally what you need to reach the root is you need an incredible amount of magical power. So the Grail War is actually like a scam set up by these three families.
Wait, do you really have to spoil all this for the Rael Zeppelin mystery to make sense?
Kind of, yeah, because it becomes relevant. It becomes relevant to how this story works.
Fuck.
And what the main villain is trying to do.
All right, continue with caution, everybody. This is like super late game visual novel spoiler shit.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's these three families who set up the Grail War in order to gather enough magic into the Grail to be able to punch a hole through to the root. Where the magic energy comes from is from the servants. So, like, the idea is that there's this thing called the Greater Grail that over about 60 years gathers up a bunch of energy from a magical ley line.
We're gonna have to post that fucking chart.
They're like, well, I don't need to explain all of that, but the idea there's veins of magic running through the earth essentially, and the Greater Grail sits on one of them, spends 60 years absorbing a bunch of energy, and then spits it out in the form of servants. That's the excuse that they use, is that like you can only happen this often because it requires a great deal of magical energy. The trick the families are pulling is that every time a servant is killed, their energy sits in the Grail, in the smaller Grail, the one that is meant to be the wish granter at the end. And once 7 servants worth of energy gets into that Grail, that's enough energy to punch a hole to the root. You get access to the root. Everything's cool. The trouble is, it doesn't even do that properly because due to a fucking basic maths error, which is the funniest part about all of this.
Wait, seriously?
Yes, the only person who can actually handle the Grail, as in grab it and use it to make a wish, is a servant.
That's right.
There are 7 servants in a Grail War. You need 7 servants worth of energy to let the Grail punch a hole. If 7 servants worth of energy is in the Grail, there's no servant left to operate it, and it just kind of goes away.
Mages are fucking stupid.
It's just so funny. The idea that they set this whole thing up and then like, oh, fuck. I didn't carry a 1.
Also, what is this about the Greater Grail fucking moving around every 60 years?
No, it doesn't move around. It just it sits on the ley line and it gathers energy and it only has enough energy every 60 years to run a war.
Oh, I see. Wait.
But the thing with the 4th and the 5th war is because in the 4th war no one made a wish, the energy wasn't used and it just went back to the Greater Grail, so it only took 10 years for the next war to happen.
Of course.
It's to do with what happens in Zero, basically. And that was pre-established in the visual novels as well. Anyway, so that's what you need to understand, is that it can't really grant you wishes, and it can't even do what the original people who set it up as a scam want it to do. So, yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah, so the Holy Grail War is fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit. That said, it's not completely useless. Now, just put that aside for the moment.
Well, yeah, because it brings Saber into my life.
So one thing they established throughout the series and the books is that Waver wants to get into the 5th Grail War. Now, this is the thing. The case file story is not a separate AU. It happens in the same canonical universe as the Fate visual novels, but it happens shortly before those visual novels. So the 5th Grail War hasn't started yet at this stage that the case files is taking place. So Waver is trying to get on the team to go to the 5th Grail War and participate in it again. The thing he's obsessed with is he wants to summon Iskander and apologize to him, basically.
This fucking good boy.
He wants to prove to him that it was Waver's fault that Iskander didn't win by basically being there and showing him, see, if you had proper mages, you could have pulled this shit off. Even though he knows, because of the way servants function, Iskander is not going to remember him at all.
See, when you say something like that, all I can think is, well, except when blah, or when blah, 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 or when they just feel like it, or.
Yeah, of course. But like that's we're playing by the rules for a moment.
Yeah, that rule is broken more often than it is followed.
Yeah, Saber remembers but that's because Saber's deal has her own separate deal. She's not.
Yeah, that's a special case. Chaldea, all the servants are a special case. The only times we've actually seen the servants resummoned have all been special cases. Usually if they're summoned in a different singularity, they'll be like, I kind of have a vague memory of you still because fuck it.
Yeah, I mean, that's generally it. The point is, though, Waver still has the relic that he used to summon Iskander, the piece of his mantle. But it's stolen from him. Someone comes into his office and opens a safe that shouldn't be able to be opened and nicks it. What this thief leaves in its place is an invitation to the Rail Zeppelin, the Mystic Eyes train. The Rail Zeppelin is a train that was built by vampires. It's not owned by vampires anymore, but they built it anyway.
Nod.
And it's a place that is able to install, remove, and auctions Mystic Eyes. Now, Mystic Eyes are basically they're a thing that people can be born with. They're basically magic eyes that contain a spell you can use at will. You don't have to be a mage to be able to use Mystic Eyes if you're born with them, but it helps. They're an established thing within the Fate universe. They're actually an established thing within the Type Moon universe from properties before Fate. Garden of Sinners, which was a pre-Fate system, features Shiki, who has the Mystic Eyes of Death Perception. A death perception. Not the Mystic Eyes of Depth perception.
She has the Mystic Eyes of Depth first. Oh shit, I have that power too.
Having cool magic eyes is like a thing. And this train is a place where they can take magic eyes out of you if you want to sell them. So they have a collection and they auction them off if you're a mage who wants to buy some powerful Mystic Eyes and have them installed on you or someone else or whatever.
Okay, so crucially, if you sell your eyes, do you just have no eyes or do you just have normal ass eyes?
Nah, they'll just stick some normal eyes in you. Or you can buy another set of Mystic Eyes if you want.
Oh, okay. They have them laying around.
Yeah. They can just give you some regular ass eyes. Now, the other thing about the train is it runs along ley lines. So the train, because it was built by vampires, and in order to be able to do all the stuff that it does, it sort of slips into a space between the underworld and the living world. So it sort of inhabits this sort of death realm.
Checks out.
So it doesn't actually run across anywhere that you can see on Earth, but it does run along the ley lines. Like I said, the veins of magic that run throughout the Earth. So that's where the train draws its power from. Waver, because he has the invitation, he wants to get the relic back. He boards the train with Grey and a couple of other people. Within the first episode of him being there's a murder. The person who was murdered is the guardian of Olga Marie Animosphere, whose name should be familiar to you if you've played Fate Go. Now, this is what I like about this story, is that it actually ties in Fate Go lore to some extent.
Yeah, because Fate Go is an AU, right?
Yes, it is. And
Okay.
I'll explain this in a minute.
Just making sure.
And this is also another one of these things that I like that these books do, is they take characters who are given short shrift in other Fate stories and actually flesh them out a little bit. Because Olga Marie Animosphere in the Fate Go story is only in there for one chapter and she dies a pretty terrible death. Spoilers.
Look, I don't believe she's dead. I never believed she was dead. It was too weird the way she died.
But in terms of her characterization, she's pretty basic. She's just kind of an angry, shitty mage who dies, right?
She's a Hadio Joe-sama. You'll never believe it. She's a mage that's a Hadio Joe-sama girl step on you. It's the first time it's been done in Fate.
But within this story, they sort of give her a bit more to do and sort of flesh her out. Now, where this ties into Fate Go lore is that, like, the Fate Go Fate universe is an AU in the sense that, without really getting into it, kind of explores the idea of what if someone actually got a wish out of the Grail before it was corrupted. Because that's part of Fate lore, is that, like, the third Grail War was the one where they summon Angry Man and he corrupts the Grail. But in the first two Grail Wars that they hold, they were really disorganized and no one ended up winning. So no one ever got to make a wish before the Grail was fucked.
Mages are so fucking bad at this.
It's a running thing that they are. They just suck.
They suck at everything.
It's something you learn late in the Fate Go story, but basically, spoilers, Olga Marie Animosphere's grandfather fought in one of the Grail Wars and won and made a wish that allows them to build Chaldea, the base, that then sets off all of the events in Fate Go. Like even winning the Grail War and everything going well doesn't really work out well for the world. Anyway, in this universe, in the canon universe, that never happens. So Olga Marie is just the heir to the Animosphere family, which is one of the 12 families. They're quite powerful in their own right. They're the head of, like, astromancy. That's what they deal with, magic involving the stars and the universe.
Yeah.
Now, within this story, at some point, her father investigated getting into the Grail War with some other partner, someone he partnered up with, and they looked into it closely. And her father realized that, the Grail's corrupt, it's useless, I can't use it for anything, I can't make wishes.
How did they realize that? People can just find that out?
I guess, I don't know, it's never elaborated on.
How does everyone not know that?
It's not elaborated on, but the idea is that they worked it. They're smart guys, they put a lot of money and time into it, and they figured out that there was something wrong with the Grail.
They quote unquote figured it out.
I mean, look, it's figurable out. Like in Heaven's Feel, a bunch of mages who really should have no way of working that shit out managed to do it.
It's just funny that this information hasn't been propagated at all.
Well, that's part of the story.
Oh,
that's
fuck.
that's actually part of the story. So
Shit.
This, which is kind of. It's kind of cool because it does actually explain why more mages aren't interested in this fucking ritual, because it's like. This should be a bigger deal within the magic world. Like, people know of the Grail, but you notice throughout the series, they keep referring to it as this very minor ritual out in the East.
Yeah, backwater kind of vibe.
This shitty backwater ritual, if you know anything about the Holy Grail War, that's not what it is. That's not really an accurate description of, like, what it's capable of doing.
What it should theoretically be capable of doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, even theoretically, like, a big part of those stories is the whole idea that, like, Shiru and the others don't want some evil mage to get a hold of the Grail because they don't care if, like, there's a massive amount of destruction to, pull off something, because they're mages. They're shits. So if regular-ass mages who were willing to do anything to, like, reach the root, or even just, do something cool, got a chance to use the Grail, they would do it. So, yeah.
True.
Anyway, so Olga Marie has a guardian, this woman called Trisha. She's the one who gets murdered, by the way. After Olga Marie's father, figured out the Grail War was useless, he sort of disappeared and became basically completely dropped out of Olga Marie's life, abandoned her. And Trisha wanted to figure out why that happened. In the course of her investigating, she worked. I'm telling you the story out of order. I'm just telling you what actually happened, like, chronologically, not what you figure out in the story, because, like I say, This is too much of a mess.
Yeah.
But she worked out that her father abandoning her was also tied to him abandoning his quest to the Grail War. She then realized that someone had been going around suppressing info on the Grail War.
Ah.
That for some reason, they learned a lot about it, but since then, it's not quite like it seems like something the Mages Association would do. But it wasn't the Mage Association doing it. Someone else is doing it. Someone else is actually suppressing all this information.
Psyops.
And she also realizes that it's somehow tied into a series of murders from about 7 years ago, which involved 7 people turning up dead without their heads. Like, just these headless corpses being found. Just so happens that on the train is this priest from the Holy Church who was connected to those murders because he was investigating them at the time.
Ooh, did those headless people have mystic eyes?
Cube, wait. Yes, they did. You're right. You picked it, but yes.
Yay!
So I should quickly explain. A force that sort of stands against the Mages Association in the Fate universe is the Holy Church, which is basically the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
But they don't quite say that. The Church is also extremely powerful, and they believe all mages are heretics. So they occasionally fight. They occasionally work together. Blah blah blah. It's very, very unusual for a priest to be on the Mystic Eyes train because it's a magecraft thing. When he initially turns up, a fight almost breaks out. But he's here because he has a very powerful set of mystic eyes he's trying to get rid of. He's an older dude, and he has these mystic eyes to let him see into the past. And he can kind of use them at will if he touches something that has like some sort of event connected to it.
Nice.
Which is part of the reason he was an investigator for the church. It's a pretty handy skill to have.
Yeah.
But as he's been getting older, one of the things about mystic eyes is because they're sort of self-powered, like you don't need a mage skill or even magecraft power to run. If they're really powerful, they can start just sort of running on their own. And as he's gotten older, they've sort of started misfiring and just going off without his will, which has sort of been fucking with his memories and scrambling his mind a bit. So he's just here to get rid of them. Like, he has a little encounter with Grey where Grey's not feeling well because she's getting a bit motion sick from the train. And he tries to give her an apple. But as he sort of just lightly brushes her hand, he gets a vision of King Arthur. And then figures out her deal and stuff. It's a cool moment. Anyway, so yeah, but this is the thing. He's connected to these murders. Hishiri Arashino is on the train as well, and because she's from Polish, she's aware of this case existed. Now, the thing about the way Trisha is murdered is she's murdered in the same way. She turns up headless, and her head is missing.
Ta-da. But she didn't have mystic eyes, did she? Or did she?
She did.
Oh,
she had mystic eyes of premonition.
Everyone's got motherfucking mystic eyes.
She could see things into the future. Now, okay, so Trisha's head turns up.
Phoenix, I want the twist to be that El-Melloi has the third set of the set that's the magical power to see the present, and he can, and it's but just normalize.
No. Waver doesn't have mystic eyes. He's not powerful. He doesn't have he doesn't have any cool shit like that. That's part of his whole deal.
He has the power to see to the truth.
All he's got is his intellect. So Trisha's head turns up because what Trisha did was she got a premonition she was going to be murdered. So she opened a little pocket dimension below her head, and as her head was cut off, it fell into the pocket dimension and was hidden there.
Oh, hell yeah.
And also because she could see the future, she knew that at some point Olga Murray was going to stumble and hit this particular point in the air with her hand, so she left a seal there so that when Olga Murray hit it, it opened up the pocket dimension and her head fell out.
Why did she do that specifically to Olga Marie? Oh, because she's her charge or whatever?
Yeah. And Olga Murray would know how to open the pocket dimension and might be able to, like... her head still existing is important to what happens next. Like, she needed to keep her mystic eyes away from the person that she suspects is doing all of this.
I see.
Is basically the thing. Because the person, like I said, the person, like you guessed, the person who was killing all those people and taking their heads was taking them because they had mystic eyes and he was using them. Initially, Carabo, the priest, is blamed for the murder because it turns out his eyes are actually a bit more powerful than he realizes. Not only can he see the past, those eyes can make something that occurred in the past temporarily manifest in the present.
What?
If he sees something happening, he can make it happen now.
What?
The way they were using the murders and the way they were used here was that you can just make like a sword slash with a knife or something else in, like, you know, bare air, walk away, and then if someone steps into that space, you can make the slash happen now. And that's how these people were killed.
Okay, so wait, so can mystic eyes, so they're not just like perception powers, they can do literally like any kind of magic?
They can do lots of different magic, yeah.
Okay.
Like in the first episode, Waver encounters a guy who can make you just freeze in place with his eyes. There's people who have eyes that can compel you to tell the truth. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I guess I expected most of them to like involve looking in some way. I don't know, that just seems more attenuated. Like, my mystic eyes can change where the moon is.
Well, it's basically any. There's a chance for any type of magecraft to be like sort of basically contained within a mystic eye.
I'm sorry, I choked on my water because the person in the chat said, "Are there mystic eyes?" Of go away.
Carabo didn't know this about his own eyes, and then because Arashino blames him for the murder, because he came here to sell the eyes, the people who run the train take his eyes off him early, and he's just sort of left blind for a while. And so they think they've caught the killer, da-da-da-da.
Confiscating your fucking eyes.
Yeah. And what's the other thing about this is that those eyes are actually super rare. So they have like these different categorizations for mystic eyes based on how powerful they are. And those are like jewel class. The next level up is rainbow class.
That's stupid.
And like those are like the sort of eyes that are only rumored to exist. Turns out Shiki from Garden of Sinners, those eyes of death perception would be classified as rainbow class because like they let her basically kill anything.
Rainbow class.
I know, the names are silly. Anyway.
Also, wait, doesn't that just mean that they gave the priest exactly what he wanted?
They did, but now he's also on the hook for like 8 murders.
Yeah, true.
And because he doesn't have the eyes that let him see into the past, he can't figure out whether he did them or not.
I see.
Like, that's one of the things. Waver questions him and he's like, I honestly don't know. Because at this point, my mind is so fucked up by all these like past memories playing on me, I just can't trust anything I think anymore.
Ha.
Now, slight spoilers, it turns out he actually did do them, but he wasn't doing them under his own control. Someone was manipulating him.
Ha.
Now, this would all be fairly straightforward, except the other thing that has happened...
You can't say that.
And I mean, when I say straightforward, I mean straightforward in the terms of one of these sort of mage, stories. But the bit that doesn't fit is that there is a servant here. Waver gets an invitation to meet someone in the cargo train, and the servant turns up riding Iskander's noble phantasm, that big chariot with lightning and the dead horses. Remember that thing?
Yes, I mean, obviously. Wait, I thought it was pulled by like oxen.
Oh, oxen. Yeah, it's oxen. Yeah, dead
Please,
oxen. Whatever.
get on
They're
my
dead.
level.
That's the point. The point is that they're skeletons. Anyway.
Okay.
Now, obviously, so first of all, this is weird because there should not be a servant here. You should not be able to summon a servant outside of the Holy Grail War. Like, it requires the Greater Grail. It requires all of that sort of stuff. There should be no servants.
I'm putting Fate go to the side in a closet for the moment.
Yes, of course. Yeah. The other thing is that, this servant is someone who was connected to Iskander. Her name's like Hephaestion or something. I think she did actually exist within that story. She was like a confidant of Iskander's, possibly actually related to him.
Hephaestion.
And she knows that Waver summoned Iskander a while back, and she doesn't like Waver and she wants to kill him. Between Grey and Waver, they manage to sort of hold her off. Phoenix, at one point, there's a fight.
Phoenix, you'll never believe this. Hephaestion normally is a boy.
Oh.
You'll never believe.
She's a sexy lady.
In Fate, it's a sexy girl, but you'll never believe that in history it was a man.
They do explain that at the end. Anyway.
Okay, I'm looking at this sexy girl.
Anyway, a bunch of stuff happens, and Waver works out what's going on. Like, why there is a servant here, what all of the previous cases we've had in the anime connect to. The auction comes up. Someone, Yvette is on the train, the idol girl, because her family connected to Mystic Eyes. She's trying to buy the priest's eyes, and Waver's trying to prevent her from doing that. It turns out that Yvette is actually working for the main villain. That's specifically who she's spying for.
She does look like a little villain girl.
Yeah, she does.
Oh, it's funny that she's just like, surprise, I'm a bad guy. Like, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah. Now, Waver, this entire time, has had one of his students with him, Claus, that nice kid I mentioned. But Waver works out that Claus is not who he appears to be. He's actually someone in disguise. And he proves that because he manages to get Claus to actually turn up. And there's two of them there. And Waver... Waver, I'll just play this for you. Waver says, "So who are you?" And this person is pretending to be Claus. Says, "Haven't you worked it out?" And Waver says, "Yes, you're the previous department head of modern magecraft theories, Dr. Heartless." Has to say it in English. I don't know why, but he has to say it in English. His name is Dr. Heartless.
I mean, is that not just his name? Is that literally his name or not?
Yeah, but his name is... Like, did Japanese people say doctor?
Well, I mean, they're from London, so I assume that's the idea, is the way to say master.
I suppose, yeah. But yeah.
Ansa.
So yeah, Dr. Heartless is here.
Heartless.
Now, the great thing about this reveal is that up to this point... No one has ever mentioned Dr. Heartless. When you're watching the show, you have no fucking idea who this guy is.
That's awesome. That's the best reveal.
But once Waver actually explains what's going on, it's kind of cool. So, Dr. Heartless was the guy that Animasphere's, Olga Marie's dad, was investigating the Grail War with years ago. Now, when Dad Animasphere realised that he couldn't actually use the Grail to make wishes, he sort of said, "Oh, fuck it, it's useless." But Dr. Heartless recognised that there is something that the Grail does that is actually pretty good, which is summon servants. It is a pretty powerful ability to summon some person from the past who's incredibly strong and powerful and shit, who is basically, tied to you and does your bidding.
Yeah.
So, what he decided he was going to do was find a way to summon servants outside of a Grail War. So the reason he was manipulating Carabo to murder people with Mystic Eyes was that he figured out a way, like normally you would need to transplant Mystic Eyes into your own head to make them work, but he realized that he could keep a person's head alive if they had Mystic Eyes and then use the Mystic Eyes himself, as long as he could keep the head working. Yep. So he stole a bunch of different Mystic Eyes that allowed him to cover up all of the information about the war so no one else would investigate it. And then he brought together all the bits and pieces that he would need to recreate the ritual.
Wait a second. So he just has a bunch of heads laying around, and what, does he just touch the heads and activate their different powers?
Yeah, basically.
Does he play them like a xylophone?
Kind of, yeah. You don't see him doing this, but that's how it's explained.
Okay.
Now, in terms of actually summoning a servant, he gathers together a bunch of different things. He actually summons Hephaestion on the train. We don't see it happen, but that's where it happened, because the train is on a ley line, so it's got access to a large amount of magical power. The train exists halfway into the underworld, so it's got a connection to the dead. He had the relic, which was the thing he needs to summon a particular thing, and he also had Waver. This is the reason he hasn't killed Waver and wants him around, because Waver has actually participated in a Grail War before. He's also got a connection to a Holy Grail War.
Huh.
So by bringing all of those pieces together, he was able to summon a servant. And now he's got this servant. He's, this very powerful thing that he's able to keep alive on his own. So it's actually everything in the series so far has been about Waver eventually figuring out that there is a shitty person down here who has figured out how to fucking summon a servant, which is kind of scary. Like, you got a mage who can just walk around with this incredibly powerful familiar, basically.
Wait, but can she only exist on the train, or would she theoretically be able to just be a person now and hang out?
Yeah, she can exist indefinitely, which again is, weirdly, something that is established can be done in the VNs if you're a powerful enough mage. After the summoning, if you're strong enough, you don't need the Grail's help anymore to keep a servant in place. So after this point, there's a fight. Waver and the priest and Grey fight Hephaestion, and there's a bunch of sort of back and forth about Iskander and what he believed and why Waver's a better subject of his than Hephaestion. And obviously, at some point, eventually Grey pulls out the lance and just makes him go the fuck away. That's basically what happens in the Rael Zemplin story. What do you think?
Well, wait. So they. I feel like I missed the climax part. So they fight Hephaestus, Hephaestus wife, and
yes.
Grey beats her, and then does Waver point at the rando, his student, and be like, "You done it? Who done it?
No, because at this point he's been unmasked. He's not dressed like a student anymore. But also they managed to stop Hephaestion and that from killing them and destroying the train, but they still get away. They can't wipe them out completely. So this is like the last episode of the series is just, and this experience has shown Waver that like joining the Grail War would be a waste of time and wouldn't achieve anything, whereas there is a thing he can do to serve Iskander in the real world right now, which is figure out what the fuck Dr. Heartless is actually up to, what he wants to use this servant for, and stopping them. Because that's what Iskander would have wanted. He wouldn't want his power to be misused.
So when you say she makes him go away, so she's still out there in the world somewhere? Hephaestion?
Yeah, they just stop them for the moment.
Okay.
So that's kind of what's going to happen in the future in the series.
Well,
yeah.
That all makes perfect sense. That's an interesting point to... So why do you think it is that they decided to cover that specific mystery so heavily in the show? I
think because it ties into a strong turning point for Waver. Because he goes from being this person who's like basically absorbed by his regrets from the war into a person who now has a much more productive goal that isn't going to destroy him. Another one of the characters that like recurring fake characters that pops up in this is the Necromancer Mercenary from Apocrypha.
Oh yeah, the Mordred guy.
Yeah, the Mordred guy. He pops up at one point. Actually, he hangs out for the rest of the series as well. But at one point, he's sort of talking to Grey on the side, and he has this line about. He tells Grey to really keep a close eye on Waver. He has this line about the dead stay at the side of the living, then drag them into the past. Ooh. And it's basically trying to warn her, like, if he gets involved in another Grail war, it's going to kill him. You've got to try and find a way to stop him from doing that. And that's kind of where he ends up after the end of this story, is that he, in encountering Hephaestion and sort of dealing with that, he sort of recognizes that, one, he's not going to survive a Grail war, and two, like I said, there's something he can do to serve Iskander as one of his subjects right now that is much more productive than just going and apologizing to some dude that doesn't remember him.
And he's gonna live his best life.
Yeah, it's cute. There's a really nice, like, touching scene right at the end where he falls asleep and has this little dream where he talks to Iskander. One of the things I really like about, in particular, the VAs, Waver's VA performance, is that he has this very deep, resonant voice, like very commanding. But occasionally, if he just hurts himself, or also in this dream as well, you'll hear his voice switch back to his actual voice, like his natural range, which is the sounds like Waver.
Yeah,
and it's just cute, the idea that he is sort of putting on a voice at all times. Like he's in his late 30s and he's still trying to act like an adult.
Oh my god, I just saw a picture of Dr. Heartless. He looks dumb as fuck.
Yeah, he does.
And so Hephaestion, her design makes me sad because it's like I almost like it because you can see how it's going for, like it has a lot of echoes of Iskander's design in a lot of the elements of it. And it's like, that's kind of cool. But of course, then it's like, oh, she's got to have a sailor skirt. The booby cross, the cross of booby.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is fate. Not all the designs are going to be winners.
Wait, so are Sven and Flat not in the main mystery of the show at all?
They pop up at the end. They're more involved in some of the other stories, but in this and in the books, the second story in the books, they're much more involved.
I see.
But they crop up right at the end of the at the end of Rail Zeppelin, but they're not really involved in that story, no.
I see.
If you do watch the anime, I would recommend not watching the dub, because there is a dub now. I can't get past Waver's English voice. It sounds too much like someone putting on a voice. It's really strange.
But what if that's exactly how the Japanese voice sounds to Japanese speakers?
No, it just sounds like a person with a deep voice. It doesn't sound like a fucking...
Maybe you can't tell because you're an Anglophone.
Maybe.
But you shouldn't listen to the dub anyway, because then you don't get to hear Gurave,
Yeah.
Crave.
Or,
Depraved.
why done it, or all the other fun, gratuitous English.
Yeah, it's very important. Oh, also, other thing about the anime, Yuki Kajiura doing the good work, my girl.
Yeah. Yeah, the music is banging. It's really strong.
Yeah. Yeah, she also did Fate Zero, but from what I've heard of the El-Melloi soundtrack, it felt like she was going a bit more interesting with it. I think she did better work for this one.
There's a lot of cool themes, but in particular the theme they usually play at the end of an episode, which I think is called Case Closed, is
yeah,
it's a fun theme.
and the opening.
But yeah, like I say, you can go and essentially pirate the fan translated books. It's an unfortunate hybrid thing where like only the first half of the Rail Zeppelin story is translated, so you can really only read up to that point and then go watch the anime. That's if you were interested. Like the anime is a good time on its own. I do think you'd be better off reading the first 3 books. They're not that long. They're pretty easy to read, and then going and watching the series because you'll just have a better understanding of what the fuck's going on. Also, you probably need to have seen Zero. And depending on it's like with Fate stuff, depending on how far you want to go back, the visual novels, the original visual novels are great. And like definitely a good time if you can find a way to play them.
God damn it, I gotta read the other 2 arcs and we gotta do a podcast about it or something.
Yeah. There is a way to play them on your phone now, which is why the way I finally got through them, because it was much more convenient than sitting at your computer and doing it.
Oh yeah, you fucking super hacker kid.
Both on iOS and Android, there are 2 emulators you can use with a bit of fucking around to get them to work. You Google it, there's some YouTube tutorials and stuff. Not that difficult to set up if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I might have to actually try to set that up because I was going to play it on my tablet, but then it doesn't work quite right. So maybe I'll try to do it on my phone like you fucking future kids.
But yeah, that's Case Files. I think it's probably it's potentially my favorite entry into like the Fate sort of various franchises, I think.
Damn.
It's just a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun in terms of, fucking around with the world of mages. And Waver's a cool character, and Gray's a cool character. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and I like that it seems like someone who looked at a lot of the stuff in Fate that's like, why the fuck does it work that way? Well, I'll come up with a reason why it works that way, and it's nice. It's nice that they were kind of like looking in the cracks like that.
Yeah, I mean, according to Makoto and Gen, like in their commentaries on the books, a lot of that stuff does come from Nasu. They will go to him and ask him, like, so how do you think this works? And he's got an explanation. Like, Makoto in particular talked about how there's so much stuff that Nasu told him that he wanted to put into books but couldn't fit. So, like, yeah, apparently it is all there and it does kind of make sense.
I imagine you ask Nasu how something works and he just opens his mouth and like rainbow barf comes out. And like,
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's a fun time. It's good. Like I say, if Fate sounds like your kind of thing, it can be tricky to get into, but it is rewarding if you do. There's a lot of fun shit going on in there, and also there's just a ton of it. Like you won't be at a loss for other Fate things to look at. They're like Zero, like apart from the visual novel, Zero is good. Hollow Atraxia is apparently pretty interesting. The Fate Extra universe, like all the Moon Cell stuff, is pretty cool. Like I haven't played Extra because it's a really old game, but I have played Extella and Extella Link, which are both a lot of fun. Fate Go obviously is great. Like it's weird and it can be a very mixed bag from time to time, but there's a lot of, especially for a gacha, the story stuff is really pretty well done and pretty interesting.
Yeah, it has a story that time was put into, which is very novel for a gacha. And it's buck wild and there's a lot of fun to have in it. It's a big world of dumb shit. And
like with all Fate stuff, there's just good characters. At the core of all good Fate franchises is fun characters who are really engaging. Even the shittier franchises like, say, Apocrypha, still have 1 or 2 characters that's like will resonate with you and maybe won't carry you through the whole thing, but like you'd be happy to see them elsewhere, like say Mordred, or the Necromancer guy.
You like all the saber faces because you keep being like, you know what, Nero's really grown on me. I like Nero a lot. You know what, I really like Mordred. Mordred's really grown on me. You know, I like Bedivere. Bedivere's a really good boy. You just like all these fucking saber faces. I'm loyal to the true king.
I mean, look, Nero Nero's a fun character in her own right, and like I said, she's not personality-wise, she's not like Saber at all. She's a totally different sort of spin on a king character.
Oh yeah, they are really all their own interesting characters. Even fucking like Salter has her own stuff going on. It's fun stuff.
There's Salter in Heaven's Feel, who is just like a corrupted version of Saber. But then there's Salter in Fate Go, who sort of like they eventually turn her into her own character, which is kind of fun as well.
Trash queen.
Anyway, yep, Fate.
Fate.
It's good. You should watch some.
It's many things.
Yeah.
Check it out.
All right, that's me attempting to explain in a... It only took me 2 hours, but I explained a bunch of Fate stuff to you.
No, it's interesting because, I was like, is this going to be like 5 hours? But obviously, like, it was mostly set up because this is like, you just have to explain all the things that are there.
Yeah.
You don't so much have to talk about like what happens from moment to moment.
No. I wanted to try and get across why these characters are cool and why I think you should watch them.
Yeah, look at that Shinjuku Salter. She's a good wife. There's a cool figure of her on her motorcycle, and it's good. All right. Have a good multimedia franchise of many iterations that are pretty confusing.